We have more for your ears only. I'm Katherine Herzog.
I'm David Alpern with this quote from the news. Wouldn't he have called the police if he was really afraid? That was Jacksonville, Florida prosecutor John Guy summing up the case against Michael Dunn, a white man who pumped 10 pistol shots into a car after arguing with its young black occupants about their loud rap music, killing one 17-year-old because he said he thought he saw a shotgun inside, though none was ever found. Now this.
It's a new year, new format, and new way to determine a champion in NASCAR. Starting in 2014, the chase for the NASCAR Sprint Cup increases from 12 to 16 drivers. The best way to qualify is to win. Each regular season winner gets a spot in what will be called the chase grid, provided he or she is in the top 30 in points and attempted to qualify for every race.
And you thought NASCAR racing was simple, just driving in circles very fast. But the stock car empire has made some extensive and complicated changes to its split-season playoff format. In fact, it's the fourth format change since the chase for the Sprint Cup was introduced in 2004. In addition to more drivers, it means any driver who wins a race during the course of the 26-event regular season will be granted entry to the chase, no matter where he or she ranks in the points standings.
And while much of the world focuses on the Olympics, millions of Americans are looking forward to the Daytona 500 race on February 23rd and a new NASCAR season. John Havick is one of those race enthusiasts, having grown up in Harlan, Iowa, hometown of two of the sport's earliest champions. He's also the author of The Ghosts of NASCAR, The Harlan Boys, and the first Daytona 500 from the University of Iowa Press. And for your ears only, John Havick joins us now. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
When you were a boy, your grandfather sold his stock car to the then aspiring racer Johnny Beauchamp, who later went on to become the first champion of the Daytona 500. Is that when your interest in stock car racing began?
That's exactly right. The family pronounced it Beauchamp, and almost everyone else pronounced it Beauchamp or some other way. But so I'll probably be pronouncing it Beauchamp. But yeah, that's true. We didn't have any interest before 1950, but that was really the first year that the old model stock cars were racing very much in the area where we happened to live at the time, which was Omaha and Council Bluffs area. And my great-grandfather had come to Harlan in 1880, and my grandfather lived there, and that's how Johnny got the car.
Well, you closely followed Johnny's career, but what was it that brought your interest back to the sport as an adult and to writing this book?
Well, I was, as a young boy, I was quite interested in it. I had my photo in the paper. I had little stock cars I'd painted up like those on the track, and I went to the races. So I had a near obsession with the racing for about 4 or 5 years. But then I went to high school and college, and I became a college professor, and I just really didn't have time or anything to follow it.
So what brought you back, and especially to the book The Ghosts of NASCAR, which focuses on the very first Daytona and a big dispute over the real winner of that race?
I always knew there was a story there, and I'd written and done research as a professor, but not about stock car racing. And so there was this story there, and it's kind of surprising that no one did it, and I just decided, well, it's my time, and many of these people will be gone if I don't do the story now. And so I was right after I retired, I started in on it soon after that.
Well, what were the most controversial findings about that race, about the results?
Yeah, well, see, they flashed across the finish line, Johnny Beauchamp and Lee Petty, and one other driver, Joe Weatherly, very close together, and within a foot or two. And everyone on the finish line said it was Lee Petty had gone first across in front of Beauchamp. But the officials of NASCAR, the owner and the flag man, said that Johnny won the race. And so that went on. And in the pits, the pit crews were arguing about it. I found that out. That never was reported. That they were claiming right away, Beauchamp's pit crew, that Lee Petty was a lap behind. They had their pit was very close to the Petty pit, and so they thought he'd pitted so many times and stopped that he had to have been that far behind. And anyway, so there was a dispute, but the officials just went ahead and gave Johnny the race. it seemed that there was some problems with the scoring system of NASCAR. The scoring is the word in NASCAR for counting laps, and what they didn't have any money back then, so they allowed the wives and the volunteers and friends to count the laps, and they gave them a card and they had a clock, and the wives counted the laps basically, and it was kind of a loosely supervised system. And then I looked closer and closer, and sure enough, there was a pattern where Lee Petty had one more lap than people thought, over and over again. Several times, starting in 1958. And then people told me that in 58 it was just really flagrant. It was a race near Charlotte, and Curtis Turner, a NASCAR driver, had led the whole race, and he let Lee Petty get around him on the last lap because he was sure that Curtis Turner was sure that Lee Petty was well behind and a lap behind, and Lee Petty demanded a lap count. Sure enough, he had one more lap, and there was quite a lot going on. Curtis Turner was reported in the paper at the time saying Elizabeth Petty had the fastest pencil in stock car racing.
You found that old-time drivers don't think too much of the new super speedways. What's their preference and why?
Well, from what I can tell, the racing is a little more just one car following the other car around the track, and these smaller tracks where there's dirt and not as big, where they could open them up all the way. There was more banging and close side-by-side racing, and kind of pushing and shoving, and some more out and out trying to get around another car any way you could figure it out. Whereas in this racing now on these big super speedways, you just don't have that kind of activity. And the drivers, some of them don't watch the races.
John Havick is the author of The Ghosts of NASCAR, the Harlan Boys, and the first Daytona 500 from the University of Iowa Press.
Quote from the news, a standard that will be a benchmark in all of sports. That was the promise of clubhouse reform made by Miami Dolphins owner Stephen Ross after an outside report to the NFL confirmed crude and near daily harassment of African-American rookie Jonathan Martin by Richie Incognito, John Jerry, and Mike Pouncey, to the point Martin contemplated suicide.
Next, music behind bars, piano bars, and beyond, for your ears only.